Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Alex Keith. I'm part of the board at Space.City. We're so excited to have the talk we're about to have today. Just a few opening remarks and then we can get started. If you have to leave for any reason, we ask that you use the children's center door over there. After the event, we're having a really cool happy hour with the speaker. We'll be having drinks and merch available for purchase. And all of the proceeds from that help us pay for events like this. And honestly, these events are so important to us and we love putting them on for everyone. And with that, I would just like to shout out a special thank you for our volunteers and our sponsors for making this specific event possible. Do we have any first timers here tonight? Wow, we love to see it. For the first timers, I would just like to briefly explain a little bit about Space City and what we do. Space City is a team of bright volunteers whose mission is to create a space in Seattle for critical discourse around design, art, architecture, and new ideas. Since 1997, Space City has continued to bring progressive and provocative thinkers, designers, architects, and artists to Seattle. And tonight is no different. Our guest speaker, Kendall Latham, is a multidisciplinary designer. That's a big word, who has worked on retail spaces, large civic projects, interactive installations, and events, including fashion shows for legendary brands such as Raf Simons, Dior, and Kenzo. As director of retail design for Glossier, he shapes online brands' real-world experience. As Latham continues to conceptualize and develop stores, he does so with a dedication to shifting the paradigm, another big word, of traditional retail to new uncharted territory. He believes in creating destinations informed by place and inspired by people like me and you. Experiences that are unique to their location and community, like us. Glossier stores have become a travel destination, and Latham has played a key role in these original and innovative experiences. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Kendall Latham.
Thank you, Alex. I didn't write that, I promise. It's crazy. Hi, I'm Kendall. And first I want to thank Space City. It's really difficult to organize something like this, and they've done such a beautiful job, and I felt very welcome in Seattle. I love visiting here. And thank you everyone for coming and listening to me talk about immersive design. So the title of the lecture, If You Build It, Will They Come, actually comes from a movie, Field of Dreams. It's a movie about baseball. And in the movie, Kevin Costner's the main character. And he is standing in this cornfield, looking out on this cornfield that he owns, and he has this crazy vision to turn it into a full-blown baseball field in hopes that people come and see it. And everyone thinks it's a really terrible idea. So instead of a declarative statement, the original statement is, if you build it, he will come. So we're scrapping that. And I want to pose it as more of a question. If you build it, will they come? And what makes immersive spaces resonate with people and the people who are experiencing them? So this is the current definition, Merriam-Webster. Providing, involving, or characterized by deep absorption or immersion in something. And that something today is built environments specifically. And controversial opinion, but I think that people created language, people made words, and I think that people can change and have changed words as time goes on. And So what I want to explore here and what I want to kind of ask is how immersive design has changed and how we can sort of redefine or elaborate on it now, and what are some of those ingredients that go into this like immersive soup. So what's kind of led me to ask this question over and over, because I still ask it, it's not something that I like asked and figured out, um, stems from some of my past experiences. And this slide kind of shows a few examples of projects at different scales, and the order of the images is also purposeful. I think that, you know, when I was working on large civic projects at OMA, which is funny because we're in a large civic project by OMA, I think you're just thinking at such a huge scale, which is really valuable. And I think it's important to think about program and diagrammatic design. But slowly, I kind of shrunk my way of thinking. And so you have this Kenzo facade that's sort of a smaller scale than this huge civic project. And then moved on to more of like a scenography set design approach where, you know, you have all these kind of objects and lighting, and it's not necessarily something structural, but it kind of, I don't know, I guess introduced the idea of this romantic environment to me. And then you have Glossier's first permanent retail store in LA. It's since changed to a different location, but this was that first project, sort of a medium, small store. And then the Seattle pop-up that was here on Broadway East. And I think because my projects kind of shrunk in scale for the most part. My mind kind of shrunk in focus in a way. I thought a lot more about the individual and the person and that first person experience. I think, you know, in architecture school way back when, and thinking about these large projects, it's really easy to get distracted and not think about like that single person's experience and that there are multiple kinds of single people. So working at an intimate scale, retail and store design, it's just sort of brought me to focus on that individualized experience and a very sensory experience. And since working at Glossier, been there about 6.5 years, I've worked on a number of projects that really afforded me the opportunity to focus on those interests. So here's some examples of some Glossier spaces. And I think it's also really important to recognize that this isn't solely my work. I didn't just do all of this myself. There's an incredibly talented team of designers, art directors, you know, other spatial designers that put a lot of work into these projects. And I can't take credit for them all. So you see these images are all a consistent Glossier space. They all kind of have the Glossier branding. There's a very, very identical experience inside in terms of trying product. That is sort of the reason they exist for the most part. But the fun challenge with these stores is how do you create a store that feels super unique, super considered, a special experience if you're in London or you're in Seattle or you're in LA, but still have this like consistency in it and be able to have it be a recognizable experience. It is really important to a brand to have an identifiable, you know, brand presence, but having it be so unique and also so different from each other, I think is also really exciting and lends itself to something that is, you know, immersive. So I'm going to start with an example. This Glossier LA store I talked about earlier. It was 2018. It's my very first project with Glossier. It was a huge deal. It was our first like official brick and mortar permanent store. And it was the first time that my team and I were really thinking about, you know, permanent retail design, human behavior, making something that can evolve and change, which was really exciting. And we also really wanted to incorporate this localized theme, like I talked about in the last slide. Like, what can we do to make it feel uniquely LA? So we incorporated things like these dried grasses and really embraced this like natural skylight and these flowers. And there's little like car mirror details kind of sprinkled throughout the store too. So like little winks and nods to some LA, you know, icons. But we also wanted it to be more than a transactional experience. And there was this little dressing room in the back that we we're trying to figure out what to do with, and we didn't want to just like make the store bigger because it was kind of ironed out. So we decided to turn it into this secret canyon room. And it was sort of, I don't know, it was sort of a wild card, and we kind of just went with it. And, we messed around in 3D modeling and figured out how to, create one of these things out of foam. And, we had the lighting that changed, like the sunset. We had someone go to Antelope Canyon and record sounds and that played in this room. And I think like in that sense, it's immersive, but I hadn't really heard the term used so much outside of the design world ever. And then, it became really popular, and people, took photos in it and posted them on Instagram. And, there was a dog dedicated Instagram account for this closet. And it was sort of this time where like everyday people not that aren't in design started saying, it's an immersive experience, it's immersive space. And I don't know, it just started happening over and over. So I was kind of forced to think about it. And it was really exciting. So then the challenge was like, how do we create, this sort of hypey, immersive quality again and again and again without creating this canyon and not creating this identical experience and not like disappoint people? Are people going to want this canyon every time, et cetera? So as we move through, I want to identify 5 of these kind of themes and studies that I found pretty profound when thinking about immersive spaces. And they all differ in design and intent and space and intended audience and human behavior. But firstly, we'll look at this idea of orchestration and ritual, and we'll look at a Gothic cathedral. I promise I'm not going to give you like an art history 101 recap. And then we're going to look at the idea of replication, so Cracker Barrel. I'm sure some of you know what Cracker Barrel is. I hope so. I'll take a poll later. And how you can really achieve replicating something hundreds and hundreds of times, but having these special moments within an experience without it being, cookie cutter, for lack of a better word. And then frameworks, these kind of ambiguous spaces that serve as this canvas for exploration and creativity. Fantasy and memory with Disney, the Disney franchise. It's huge. It kind of transcends time and place. And then shopping, I put an exclamation point there, and how retail experiences and shopping has changed and it's responded as we've grown and as time has passed. So after identifying all of these, we'll look and see how these ingredients and these kind of ideas and case studies have informed the redefinition and are able to elaborate on the idea of immersive design. So, orchestration and ritual. This is a Gothic cathedral plan, and I think it's valid and super interesting because it shows this direct correlation between people in a place, in a context of a super shared belief, a spiritual belief. And obviously, the Glossier, the Gothic cathedral is super beautiful. It's so ornate. The verticality of it is so impressive. People that experienced them, it was the most beautiful thing around. So, it obviously had to be connected to some higher power. But I think it's also a really important example for how architecture can orchestrate an experience. So in plan, like how does the plan inform the way the visitor moves throughout the space, and how do the effects and the different qualities in the interior transport a visitor into this, blurred space between the spiritual realm and real life? And I think from, the smell of incense, the sound of prayer, the play of shadow and light, there's so many qualities within the cathedral that aren't architecture that create this atmosphere as well. And those things are produced for the most part by the people within it. In this Peter Nice painting, you see this Gothic cathedral and you see, this beautiful contrast of light and shadow, but you also see these very forced perspectives, and you see, this altar on the left that has a very like intentional viewpoint. You see, I think this is like the nave looking all the way down to the crucifix at the end behind the altar. And I think this holistic experience that requires someone to participate really shows that in this immersive experience that is a Gothic cathedral, it can only be achieved because it's codependent on the visitors and the people inside. So, people wouldn't be experiencing this and participating in this in the same way if it wasn't this beautiful, spiritual place. And the place wouldn't feel the same without all of the people burning incense, praying, lighting candles. And I think that's a really important quality to think about when you think about immersive design. Here's a Glossier plan, the Glossier store in New York City. Our flagship is very much divided into specific areas that all have different functions. There are open spaces, but we definitely want to lend this sort of orchestration to the way people move and experience the space. So it kind of allows design to control the customer's movement throughout the store, but also the way they feel in different spaces. And beauty is a ritual. We have very specific orders of operation. Whether it's in the morning or night or both. It's this thing we do every single day in a very specific order. So we tried to mimic that through this program and the arrangement of space, but also atmospheric touch points. So the sound of running water in the room with the sink, the smell of the fragrance in certain areas, the glowy lighting conditions. And in engaging those senses, we've created an atmosphere that is supported and kind of enabled by design, but it isn't solely by design. And so in that way, the immersive intent is really enhanced through the interaction of people and place and sort of enveloping you in this ritual of beauty. So another great example of orchestration and path and framed views is a fashion show. So I have a little slow-mo. It was playing at 10 times speed earlier, so I'm glad it's slow-mo now. But it's all about the path the models take. It's all about the perspective of the audience that really transports you. But in this case, most importantly, it's this singular camera moment that's hyper-focused on the model. And I think it's such a short experience. It's literally 5 to 10 minutes long, which is kind of heartbreaking. But you see this framed view, and this is kind of the money shot. And instead of behind this model seeing a crucifix, you're seeing a Dior hot air balloon, which I think is more fun. Okay, second example, Cracker Barrel is my favorite example. I'm so excited to talk about it. Raise your hand if you've been to a Cracker Barrel and know what it is. Okay, probably half. And that's great, because I'm jealous that people get to find out about it for the first time. I think that it's such a great example of immersive design, and I think some examples and sometimes designs like these and spaces like these go overlooked. And I think that's kind of because they weren't like the popular girl in class, And I wasn't the popular girl in class either, which is why I love talking about this a lot. There's 687 Cracker Barrels, and I looked this up, and I know that's the number. And when you consider the idea of replication in relation to Cracker Barrel, I think I really look back to like my own experience going. It's a country restaurant, and that's putting it lightly, but I remember getting into a car with my parents, my grandparents, sometimes a cousin. It kind of, I don't know, it was always a big group for some reason, and always this big event. But when you drive up, it looks, no matter where you are, it's usually on the side of a highway, but no matter where you are, you drive up and you see this old country farmhouse, or what looks to be an old country farmhouse. And you see this porch lined with rocking chairs, all of which are available for purchase. And so every single one looks so identical. And I kind of love this image because, the flag's a little wonky, the chairs are not even, but it's this familiar feeling that is really powerful. And I think having this identifiable facade anywhere you go, if you're in Texas or Kentucky or Pennsylvania, it's exactly the same, but it has this really powerful feeling. When you go inside, this theme really continues in a huge way. The restaurants are divided into two spaces. One half is a restaurant, one half is a country store. Both are amazing. The country store has all these like vintage candies and toys and like seasonal, ornaments and whatnot. And then in the middle image, you see like all these antiques on the wall, and they're everywhere. There's hundreds of them in every single location. But what's so cool, and I didn't really think about it. I was just like, oh, cool, like knickknacks they've made, whatever. But each Cracker Barrel has someone who locally sources antiques. So each Cracker Barrel in each location has antiques that correspond to where it is. So in Kentucky, you look at the walls and you see a horseshoe or a framed photo of a Derby winner or a barrel. I don't know. And in that sense, it has this aspect of localization that is really cool. And it makes it feel really considered by whomever's designing these, and it makes each one feel special, despite it being a massive, massive franchise. So there's also very consistent examples of design and I guess programming. And they're so seamlessly integrated into Cracker Barrel that you almost don't really notice how consistent they are. But you have on the left the server wearing this apron. And on the apron, you'll see the name, but you'll also see these stars. And the stars really stand out to me because some have 5 stars, some have 1 star, but they all, it corresponds to like these certifications they take, these tests about Cracker Barrel's values. So one's like kindness and hospitality, and your servers are literally ranked as they come up to your table, which I think is really funny. But it's so identifiable and it's so consistent in every single one. And then this fireplace, every single Cracker Barrel in the restaurant has this massive hearth with this really warm fireplace, and it's also this like such a strong atmospheric detail. And it really just seamlessly fits in with all these localized antiques that it feels really natural and it feels really embedded in this place. It makes it feel really unique and local. And then on the right is this peg game that is the most infuriating game I've ever experienced, but it's at every single table. And you play it, and it's frustrating, but it's funny, and it's great, and it's in all 687 Cracker Barrels at every single table. And I'll die never winning it. But because all these things are so consistent, and all these details are so beautifully replicated, it balances, it's such a beautiful balance of replication and localization. So here's some examples of some Glossier stores that these are not replicated. These are very different designs. You have DC on the top left, and Seattle, London on the bottom left, and then Miami. So you see like how they're kind of a little bit varied. So the Glossier logo in Miami is a little more Art Deco. The DC one has a little airplane logo. But there is an air of recognizability of it within these more consistent details. So you'll find the iconic pink jumpsuit that all the employees wear. The methods of testing, the kind of like way in which you interact with the product is super consistent. It's always the same in each one. And then the last image is this "you look good" image, which is kind of a hybrid of the two. So we have this consistent brand message, "you look good," which is like sort of an affirming, nice thing to tell yourself. But the background is always corresponding to that local place. And so I think the balance of localization and consideration, even if it's not, designing the LA store to look like it came from LA, making these places feel considered and special, balanced with these consistencies that make you feel like you're in a Glossier store, for instance, I think is really, really exciting and powerful when you think about immersive design. So frameworks. Also a very exciting example. The McDonald's play place, very iconic, very fun. I wish I could, experience them as an adult, but they're really small, actually. But when I think about immersive and the feelings associated with, I'm going to say this word over and over and over again, so sorry. I think about these childhood memories and these feelings you get from being a child and being in somewhere fun, and it plays such an important role in defining and thinking about immersive design because it can trigger some of those childhood feelings that feel incredible. So joy and like wonder and all these feelings that you kind of miss, that you don't really get as much anymore as an adult. There's this aspect of playfulness and creativity. And I find that when you think of immersive design, emotions play such a key role and have such a strong influence with your interaction with the space. And I think this is such a great example of this blank framework with which you build your own world inside. So, it looks like a hamster cage, but it's not. They're not telling you get in it. It's a hamster cage. Pretend to be a hamster. Maybe they do. I don't know. But the play place is such a utilitarian object. You use it as a tool to then create your own world within it. It itself is so colorful and it's so fun and it's so enticing to go in this thing. But maybe you're in a submarine, maybe you're in a spaceship, whatever it is. But because the design is arbitrary and it is kind of just a random tangled up set of plastic tubes, it allows you to let your imagination run wild, which I think is so cool and powerful, especially for children. And then beyond the design and the imaginative qualities of McDonald's Play Place, what's really special is that it gives people an opportunity to socialize, especially at such a young age. You make friends, you're on teams with strangers, with other kids that you meet in the tubes. But this synthesis of exploration, imagination, social interaction, it's what evokes that kind of childhood joy and wonder and innocence, which I think is something that's so exciting about designing a space and thinking about emotions and things that you could experience inside of a space. And so while we don't have colorful tubes and slides in Glossier yet, or ball pits, that could be fun. We do have a system, we do have a framework, and we do have, this very, very, I guess, organized system so the products stay exactly where you need them to go. And in that sense, our customers have the freedom to explore and be creative. And with the testing system, you walk into the store, there's all these products everywhere, but it's not a space where you can go up and, pick up a box and go to a counter and buy it and leave. You can only try the products in the store itself. So you're encouraged to go through this framework of tables and these regimented systems of display and information and be creative and have fun and use your imagination to use these products and meet other people and have discussions around beauty and something that you have in common. And it's this community and this communal feel when you do have those kinds of discussions where you're not, you're like, oh, hey, what shade is that? Or what's that? And they have a conversation about it and why they like it. And all of a sudden you're having this conversation, you're experimenting, you're creating. And I think that's something that we really, really try hard to do in our stores and not just make them this transactional space, but make them something more. So Disney, a big one. What makes Disney particularly interesting and why I think it's also so exciting to study and to think about is just like people's obsession with it. People are obsessed with Disney. Usually kids, but there are Disney adults, which, love it. But this deep-seated shared fascination with world building, with fantasy and storytelling, is this shared experience that most of us have. I remember in school, you would walk in. I remember walking in one day and my teacher starting the lesson with, when you went to Disney World. And I was like, oh yeah, duh, when I went to Disney World. But now when I think back, I'm like, oh, she just assumed that every single person in class had this shared experience of going to Disney World, and that was how common and how, assumed this shared experience was. And obviously, there's Disney movies, there's memorabilia, there's all these things that exist in childhood. And we've probably all gone to a Disney birthday, seen or have dressed up as a Disney character for Halloween, and we probably have a favorite movie. But this unavoidable existence of Disney and the connection that these these memorabilia, stuffed animals, and these in real life examples of Disney, specifically Disney World and Disney parks, becomes this connection to the fantasy you see on the screen. And when you think of toys in the Disney store in the mall, which I was absolutely obsessed with, it allows them to bring a piece of this magic or this fantasy home with them and have it in their everyday life. And so this kind of ever-present sense of immersion, it transcends just Disney World and the Disney park, and it culminates ultimately, into that pilgrimage to the park. So welcome to Disney World. For a lot of people, it's this kind of like I was saying earlier, a pilgrimage to Disney is such a milestone for a lot of people. And it's romanticized. People get proposed there. But from the minute you step into the park, it's this just sensory overload. Every single detail is considered, it's this experience that fulfills everyone's childhood imagination. The movies you watched at home come alive. And, from the attractions and the sights to the characters that dress up who are like, trained actors and dancers, it's the park never breaks character. And I think that's such a cool link to kind of be pre-programmed to love this place. So you're already obsessed, with movies, with the whole world, with fantasy. Maybe it's a particular movie and you're waiting to find that particular character. But because you grow up with it and you already have this love for fantasy and world building, it makes this place just this like world of magic. And then, we have this photo, which probably most of you have had taken. But because these parks are living, breathing extensions of the movies, we've seen like these memories be created through these, usually like the height or the most exciting part of a ride. They're usually really funny or unflattering, usually both funny and unflattering. And they're impossible to recreate. I mean, maybe you could like AI yourself on Splash Mountain, but you're not going to get that same emotional result and of the moment. And it becomes this thing you take home that's proof that not only you went there, but you have this memory that lives on even after you leave the park. So, I don't know, to be able to create an obsession or, before, during, and after having this Disney park experience, that space is such a penultimate example of immersive design because it really does transcend its own confinement. You love Disney before you go, and you remember it and love it and have these core memories after you leave it. So we're not Disney World, but we do make sure that everyone can, go into our store and feel like they're in a place that, people in other places haven't visited. So we want to make sure that they have things to take away, and they have things, to snap and this like memory, even though it's not a stuffed animal, it's this digital proof that you visited this store. And in addition to that, this is the Seattle pop-up over on Broadway East from 2019. We've created this hybridized brand plus thematic element inside the store, and it was our first presence here. And so we had a lot of existing customers. When we go to a place and we have a pop-up or a store, it's because, we have a lot of customers that live there, and that's why we come there, because, people are excited about Glossier and they know Glossier. So for existing customers who follow us on Instagram, who use the products every day, who know the brand, this might be their first opportunity to go to a physical space. So in that way, they're already anticipating having a great experience. They know the brand, they've experienced it. It's embedded in their lives. But it really connects that pre-Glossier store experience to the experience itself. And while you have the before and during, we also create localized merch. And so this Seattle tote that we made that was sort of aligned with the thematic elements of the design, these plantable postcards that are seeds that you can plant and grow into flowers, or a water bottle, it also allows you to take that experience with you. And I think having that like before, during, after quality of an experience or a space really enforces that immersive feeling, because it just bleeds out of itself, and it's more than just the confinement of that footprint. I really hope this video plays. But this is what you're going to see. Is her name's Whitney, and I'm obsessed with her. And she made this video that kind of shows her journey before and during the Seattle store and her visit. There's a whole beauty routine she does before what you're about to see, but I did want to edit it because I didn't want you to watch a movie for 12 minutes. Okay, cross your fingers.
Okay, perfect. So I just need a jacket and some heels, and then I'm good to go. So I'm really excited to show you the Glossier pop-up boutique. I cannot wait to see it. So we're gonna head out very shortly. And unfortunately, the weather's a little bit gross in Seattle, so I can kind of stand up and show you what I'm wearing. So I'm just wearing kind of a little gingham jumpsuit with a white layered top underneath, and then I added this little gold belt. But I will show you more of my outfit a little bit later, but now I need to head out and meet my photographer, Sarah, and we're gonna go to the event together. We are at the Glossier pop-up in Capitol Hill. It is absolutely beautiful in here. They do have an immersive experience, so I'm super excited. Look at this like fabulous garden wall behind me. How fun is that?
Let's give it up for Whitney. Incredible. So I think what's so cool about that is that it connects this, someone into Glossier, someone creating a video for themselves, for others, and also connecting it to a space and something that's designed as this like destination. So, shopping! Exclamation point. So speaking of destination, things that are a destination, I think this is a nice segue into the 50s and 60s when department stores became super, super popular, and they were more than just this transaction. And keeping up with the Joneses was alive now more than ever, or then more than ever. So everyone kind of wanted the latest and greatest thing, and they wanted to go to a place to figure out what that was. And I think for so many people, a trip to a department store was kind of an event, and it was kind of a destination, and it was part of a lifestyle. It wasn't just going to the store to pick something up. And people didn't go there to transact quickly. And that's why I think that shopping in this era kind of took a little bit of a turn for the better. And so you have these consultants, and you have this really bespoke experience that really relies on this person-to-person relationship. So these spaces, it's so like glamorous, and it was really reflective of the era's like sophistication and beauty and style. And it gave customers a feeling of luxury. And customer service was the most important thing. I interviewed my great aunt Laura, and I was asking her what her favorite part was about going to a department store. And she said that it felt like they wanted you to be there, which I thought was really, really cool, that you feel so welcome and warm, and it's personalized. It doesn't feel like, they're trying to sell you stuff. She said it made you really happy, and it made you feel welcome in this space. So taking the time to talk to people, to understand their needs and preferences, and offering guidance and offering expertise, and making people feel good being there also plays such a heavy factor in something that's immersive. You want to feel like you belong in a space. And then, people wanted the newest and coolest thing, whether it was beauty or fashion. But they go for different reasons now. They go to stores for so many other reasons. You can get anything you want online for the most part. I would say anything, actually. But still, people kind of seek in-person experiences, and in that way, it gives you the chance to try things on and use product. And there's certain things you can't really replicate in the digital world. I love the convenience of buying something online and it being on my doorstep the next day, but it does feel special to go into a store. And I think, there is a necessity to acknowledge tech and acknowledge social media, people's obsession with it through design. And that's why we have some of these like call to action selfie moments, things like that, ways to come along on a journey with someone visiting. But I think it's also really, really important to preserve the human experience and make sure that you can modernize it and you can adapt to the customer's lifestyle. But I feel really strongly that maintaining this human quality of something and not kind of digitizing everything is such a beautiful human thing. And it's really tactile, and it's more lifestyle than anything, I think. So here is Glossier's flagship in New York City. I'm kind of go through this project in some of the different rooms and talk through, I guess, the strategy in designing the store and why I think it combines some of these ingredients that we've discussed. And when we were looking for a site, it went on for ages because we couldn't ever find the right location for the store. And then we posed the question, like, if Glossier had a home or an apartment in New York, what would it look like? And we kept asking ourselves that question. And through design, we asked ourselves that question. And we wanted to really make this store representative of a day in the life of someone in New York. So, from your morning routine, the subway, being in like a New York City loft, and finally leaving. That's kind of the way we wanted to approach this design. So, plan of the store. We wanted to think about customer journey, of course, and how to orchestrate those experiences. And I touched on it earlier with the cathedral example, but they are guided through this space, and there is a similar logic behind this plan as compared to that cathedral. And as customers go through, it does have that metaphor for different spaces. So here, this is what you see when you immediately walk in the front doors. It is this super framed perspective all the way back. The ceiling has the vaults that were inspired by the subway. These long tables, and this is where I think there's an interplay of different programs, I guess. We loved the idea of a dining table, and not just like the table itself and how cool it looks, but the dialogue it creates. And when you're trying products on across from someone and you enter this space, you see this dining table where everyone's on either side of it, across from each other, not eating food, but trying products and having conversations. And this kind of residential metaphor and inspiration, I guess, facilitates that. So your first impression is kind of one of community and dialogue. Here, there's like more of a corridor, so it's a little bit dimmer. And we wanted to reference that moment when you get up from the table and you're like, where's the bathroom? And they're like, oh, it's down the hallway on the left. Always. I don't know, always on the left. But, it's dimmer, it's more intimate, it's private. It's kind of that moment where you pass the mirror and you back up and you like kind of, check yourself out and touch yourself and like make sure makeup's not smudged or whatever. But there are different kinds of customers. Not everyone wants to stand across from someone on a big table and put makeup all over their face and feel kind of vulnerable in that way. Some people love it. I'm not one of them. But that's why I preferred this, and creating this corridor-style space. You see that the lighting is super focused. It's much different than the other space. It creates these little cavities. It's one-sided. The tables are smaller. And it's important to acknowledge that not all customers are the same. They don't all want the same experience. And visitors in the space, all want different things. So you have to kind of acknowledge that and design to that. Here is another one of the more intimate spaces, but this is obviously reminiscent of a bathroom. There's a sink in it. And instead of large tables, we created this countertop that surrounds the perimeter. And so this kind of is made to mimic the idea of you getting ready in the morning. And so this is where you test your skincare. And we responded to that by creating also these individual mirrors. So it's almost like a vanity, a personal vanity, that then we have these little seats that pull out and you can have a conversation with an employee about what you'd like. But also, I should say that in this space in particular, in every single space, lighting is the most important thing in the world. Especially in a beauty store, of course. But bad lighting is death, and there's nothing worse. I promise. So when we think about lighting, we need to make it glowy. We need to make it flattering. People, again, want to feel welcome and good in the store, especially if they're looking at their face in a mirror. So it's just another one of those levels of consideration and thinking about the individual that's really important. And then we have the merch area. So we sell other things besides beauty products, sell hoodies, makeup bags. So we wanted this to feel more like a walk-in closet, and it also has some books that, were inspiring to us when we designed the store for a little, there's details of these behind-the-scenes moments. And then we have the lounge/living room area/waiting area with this kind of large coffee table, exposed brick. But going back to identifying customers' needs, not everyone's there to shop. Sometimes you're kind of dragged along with someone else. And that's why usually when you see this photo on social media or somewhere else, there's a lot of dads on their phones all over. Sometimes it's only that, and it's really, really funny. But it's kind of inevitable. But they're in there, they're experiencing the space, and just because they're not a customer doesn't mean we don't want them to have a great experience or just, a way to relax while the other people shop. And then finally, we have this, hyperbolic version of the theme, which is this subway recreation. And this is another one of those selfie moments that allows you to sort of take this souvenir home with you. And each space and this store as a whole is designed for a very specific purpose. While it has like an overarching creative concept, and we wanted people to feel like they're home or in Glossier's apartment, doing their beauty rituals that intends to be immersive. You see all this imagery, and there's the glowy red light. There's all these products ready for you to experiment with and play with and be creative with. You might already be someone who loves the brand, and this is your first time to a Glossier store. And I think what these images lack and what's important, and what I kind of want to, this is kind of the point, is that these images feel flat to me because there's no one in them. Design can only go so far, especially in terms of an immersive experience. And design plays an important role in creating an experience like this, but it's just a facilitator. You only design for people and what they want and how they experience the store because they're so interdependent. Immersive design should tap into everyone's senses and change the way you feel. And through design, create a space that can suggest, inform, and cultivate imagination and creativity. So immersive design, in my opinion, is really when all of these things equal out. It's when people, architecture, and design all feed each other and balance. And that's why I think, like we said earlier, I want to share a video from a customer who experienced that exact same store, but it is from this first-person perspective. And you'll see that it feels completely different because people are in it. And in my opinion, feels very immersive. Spoiler alert, it's lipstick. All right, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed it.